Hello and welcome back to Refractions. I am Stephen Mallon, the host, and I am so happy that we have photographer Jason Gardner with us. So Jason, welcome to Refractions.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Good to see you.
Good to see you
And
too.
hello from Paris.
Jealous. So yeah, so just if you can tell us all a little bit about your history in photography and when your career began, it'd be great to know.
Right. Well, I'm from New York and started my career there in New York. Been a photographer about 20 years now. 18, 20 years, I don't know. And I started, I'm a self-taught photographer, so I didn't go to school. I started by just wanting to learn. Let's see, how did I really start? I had been in the regular working world for 4 or 5 years and kind of reached my mid-20s and kind of I guess just sick of it, not fulfilled. Went backpacking around the world. I was going to go 3 months, 6 months, ended up being gone for 2 years straight. When I came back from that in my late 20s, early 20s, mid to late 20s, I started looking at the photos that I shot, and I shot that with a point and shoot. This is 98. So this is point and shoot, like Konica Z up, I remember, with film. And I started saying, oh, I love, some nice images here. What am I going to do with my life? And I kind of landed on photography without, it was almost that simple. And so I, besides learning technically how to make a photo and composition and color and all that good stuff, I kind of also had to learn how to run a business as a photographer, which is how I met you, Steve, because I joined ASMP and that helped me on that side.
Very much so. Was there a project or client that kind of like kicked you off into the
stratosphere?
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, let me see. Yeah, I started my career shooting musicians, right? That was one of the things that I loved. And this kind of is a through line to the projects we'll discuss. But the couple projects that sort of got me at the next level in terms of shooting musicians, I started shooting very independent musicians, but then I shot Antibalas for the cover of a world music magazine. I shot Manu Chao, and then it was Bob Dylan and Isaac Hayes and all that stuff. And that was impressive. But when I started showing my work to art directors, they said, this is great that you shot all those famous people, and I like your portraits, but I want to see a personal project. I want to see something that you've put your passion in. It's not just a commission work. And from my travels, I'd heard a lot about Brazil. People say you have to go if you like music, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just go to Brazil and photograph some musicians there, and that'll be like kind of a series of work. It was as simple and sort of basic as that. And I did a little bit of research, a lot of research before, because I didn't speak very much Portuguese. I'd never been there before. And I wanted to do a project about traditional musicians, right? Something a little bit, not rock stars, just kind of ones that kept a cultural through line and kind of the roots of jazz type of thing. And so from the research I did, people said, yeah, you can go to Rio, you go to Bahia, which are the two biggest sort of cultural centers of music. But, I heard all about this place called Recife in the northeast of Brazil, and Pernambuco, another state. And a lot of these, as I got more and more into the research, a lot of these ethnographers and musicologists started telling me, go to Recife, and if you go, you can look up my, musician friend there. And I ended up going, the first trip was 2004, just to kind of have a look and start shooting personal work. And basically, I got in with 2 or 3 musical groups and did some photographs. This is off season, like October, November. And they said, this is great what you started, but you have to come back for Carnival because that's when all the music happens. So that got me down the sort of rabbit hole of photographing Carnival. And I did one Carnival a few months later in the February 2005. And then I kept on returning. I realized I had scratched the surface, and I did many different carnivals after that. I think 3 straight years. Each time I spent about a month there. And then probably by the second or third trip, I thought this is going to be a book. And it ended up being this book, A Flower in the Mouth. Right. So I published that in 2013 after a lot of editing and crowdfunding and all that good stuff. But that's the kind of through line for me of my career up till that point of, music, travel, and then it became a personal work that I got to be pretty known for.
Awesome. Who'd you publish your first book with?
That was self-published, my own
Self.
press, Visual Anthropology Press, right?
Okay.
And I did that. I crowdfunded it beforehand, not knowing whether I'd go the traditional route or self-publishing. And then when I was deciding, I scored a big exhibit in Lincoln Center. It was a solo exhibit, but the only thing about that was that the exhibit was in 3 months' time. So there was no way I was going to publish it with a traditional publisher in that time frame. And I decided to hurry up the publishing and hire my own team. And in fact, I did a presentation on that at B&H about a year after I did the work with Debbie. So I
Nice.
hope that, so that was an interesting, so it was a crazy time, but it was super, it was a great motivation, when you have an impending deadline. I kind of dropped everything and did the book, and got it. I think I received shipment of the book 6 days before the exhibit. It's good times.
Not nervous
But
at all.
that enabled me to, and that enabled me to not only sell a lot of books in advance and all these things, but I did a bit of a book tour of my own of different festivals, and I showed the work at 2 or 3 venues in New York and one in Toronto, Sao Paulo, and then also I actually showed the work in New Orleans Jazz Fest, because the next year they had a Brazilian pavilion, and so I did a talk, and they invited me, and so it certainly helped sort of my visibility of that project.
Nice.
And then I guess the next step, what I'm doing now, a few years after that, I moved to France. My wife got a job, and I said, okay, let's go with that. I'll work on both sides of the pond. And besides the commercial work, and day-to-day work, I continued to shoot Carnival, but I started exploring in Europe and a little bit in Caribbean, West Africa, well, also Louisiana, Trinidad, that kind of thing. So it started becoming a whole other thing. Yeah.
How many festivals have you been to?
The project at the moment, which I'm going to talk about, is 16 different countries. How many festivals? I mean, there's often many festivals within one, so it's probably 40 or 50 carnivals altogether. Yeah. And you think, how does that math not work out? Because Mardi Gras is only once a year. How do you do that? Well, the carnival season in Europe, and just like in New Orleans, it starts the Day of the Kings on the 6th of January, and it goes until the end of February, till Lent, right? So often you have carnivals at different times, the first week in January, middle of January, end of January. They're pegged on certain holidays. So it's not only the Mardi Gras in which that happens. So it allows me to be pretty efficient. And I'm starting to get known now. This past year, Carnival, because I knew I had a lot of exhibits in this book coming out. I shot 8 carnivals in one season. It was a lot because I had lined up a bunch of things. Some villages inviting me to their carnival. Some I knew which ones I wanted to go to and kind of executed. They're all new though for me. Yeah, a lot of new work.
What has been the challenge shooting these events?
What has been the challenge? Well, technically the challenge is, 90% of the work, 100% of the work that's going to be in the book is portraiture, right? And all the portraits are square format film, and I shoot with a Mamiya 6 or rangefinder, so in the technical world, the 2 challenges are that it's a very slow camera. And I also choose to make it even harder by shooting Fuji 100 Pro via slide film. The gamut is like maybe 1.5 stops. And I don't use lights. My process is I go to the festival and I shoot it journalistically with my digital cameras to get to the point of discovery, of feeling the energy to get that portrait in the environment. And I don't interrupt the ritual ceremony, procession, whatever it is. I just find those little in-between pauses when I've been embedded with them for the day, and I say, hey, can we just do a portrait real quick? And when I mean by real quick, each portrait's about 30 seconds, maybe a minute. So there's no location scouting, really. There's no anything. It's just natural light in the field, boom. So I would say that's the challenge, technically. And then the challenge has been, editing, because it's work that I've done over many years. So a cohesive view towards that. And up till now, and including now, it's, another challenge, like all photographers face, is fundraising for the project, to get to execute it. But we'll talk about that at the end.
So, I mean, that's pretty impressive that it's not produced, because I mean, the complexity about getting all of those things kind of like lining up, like the location, the talent, the timing with the light and everything, like, it's not easy getting all those things to work at once.
Yeah.
And
well, let's go back a couple steps. Like, I think sometimes people ask me, why do you do this? Why do you make these photographs of this weird thing? What's your connection? I said, I first photographed Carnival in Brazil, but the Carnival, and Carnival is kind of a loose term. It's really the masquerade, right? On a deep level, it's, while it's connected to the Christian calendar, it's a pretty pagan, pre-Christian, ancient thing. And I find it fascinating that it happens in modern day, because it's connected a lot to and it's often these small villages. It's not, I don't photograph Nice or Venice or Rio anymore. I don't do these big carnivals. A couple of big ones, but usually it's a small village in the middle of nowhere in a mountain. And they don't know why I'm there. I mean, they know why I'm there because it's Carnival, it's beautiful, but I'm not with press. I'm not, I tend to go the day or the week before and talk with them and have a drink and kind of, I'm either introduced by an ethnographer or someone in the group. And so I have that access. At least they know that I've been there with them all day, and sometimes drinking at 5 a.m, and not just beer, just like hard alcohol, like go, because you have to be with them, right? And it happens a lot in the Eastern European countries as well, because it's, Carnival's a bit of a suspension, a bit of a trance, right? So you have to do something to kind of get out of your normal life. So when you said it's pretty incredible that I put all those things together, A, I've done it for a while, so I know what to look for, but B, it's less of the stranger danger, less of the fear factor. I'm not just showing up out of nowhere. I've been there all day, or I've been there the day before, or that kind of thing. So and I'm as crazy as they are, and I get crazy, so there's a little bit of level of, I mean, I am still the other coming in, with a camera. And it sometimes in certain festivals, very, very ancient in Spain, there's like 40 different photographers. It's like a swarm. It's not just me solo, but I tend to, if they don't quite know what I want, I could even show my work on my phone before, and then they kind of visually get it, and they see the old camera, and the only thing I tell them is it takes it's quite a slow process, but they see that's an analog camera, that I'm doing something a little different, and they kind of respect that, and they kind of they do pose a little bit, they give me something, but it's also this sort of they're kind of like, oh, you're doing it that way, okay, then maybe we should go over here, that kind of thing.
Size of your lens matters. So,
Totally.
it's really, the interaction, like, it's really great, and you can be shooting with your iPhone and be really like invisible. But if you want the attention, if you want the respect, it does matter if you show up with a real camera, and
Yeah.
like also that level of like real camera. And then there's like the film-based real camera, and they're like,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, because I mean, Carnival and the festival is at its heart an analog experience, right? You can't really enjoy it live streamed on Instagram. It's just the feeling is not there. It's a very gritty, granular, grainy thing. So film reacts to that. Film does well with that. And I often, because it is flat light, there's a patina across the work that I like, and I seek out. And sometimes if it's very low light, you have that color shift a little bit with slide film. Not to get too technical, but we all are, and on the B&H channel after all. But I kind of embrace that. I don't Photoshop it out. I don't augment it. I kind of reduce it a little bit because people are like, "What is that?" But there is. Stylistically, I don't mind that things are a little bit off.
what
Yeah.
got you hooked on the Mamiya 6?
Good question. I don't know. I think it's super quiet camera because it's a rangefinder. You can be very sneaky with it. It's the bellows is really cool because you can travel with it and it collapses down and you can put it in your shirt basically if you need to. And it's also curious. People are like, what is that? And I often, if I'm switching film, I show them the back and kind of all that. I don't know. And it's also just like, it's a, it's hardy. It's not delicate at all. It's a little bit delicate, but the body is quite strong. Yeah. It's
Yep.
yeah, it's good to travel with. No,
Yeah.
not a lot of maintenance. Yeah.
It's definitely got a following.
Yeah.
I was never a rangefinder shooter. I always wanted the mirror because I wanted to know exactly what I was getting, because the rangefinder thing just threw me off too much.
I'm so used to it now. I don't even think about it. But the only downside I would say with that is that you can't get super close like the Hassie. Yeah.
You got to have a little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah. No, what I mean by is like physically close. You can't like get dial in right to the head. You have to be a little bit away, depending on the lens.
Just from a focus distance standpoint.
Yeah. So, but so let's say I moved in France in 2016, and in 17 I started photographing carnivals. But it was really a year or two later when I started making strong connections with ethnographers here in Europe, who started, they saw that I had some momentum with it, and they started taking me to some places, and I went with them to some places. And I always give some photos, either the group or the ethnographer who's giving me some access. So I have to give back somehow to them, which is important, and it helps my reputation. And this past year in 2022, I last minute, because COVID was sort of ending in Europe, it wasn't clear in January and February. I took a last minute trip to Basque Country in Spain, and I went to a random little village that I'd heard about, and I was photographing, and some big guy, this 6'6" guy, a young guy, came up to me. He's like, "Are you Jason?" I'm like, I think. I'm not sure. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Kiki. I heard about you. I saw you on Facebook. I think it's you." And he's like, "You have to come back next year to my village." And he's like, "Because I'm the bear. And this is a village that I've been wanting to photograph a long time." So this year I went and got some really nice photos. And it was largely because he invited me and I knew where to stay. There's no accommodation. You have to, there's one B&B and it's usually booked. So you have to kind of like I stayed on someone's bed and just, like a room, Yeah, exactly. And everyone else, all the other photographers are coming in for 45 minutes away. And I wake up at dawn, I'm there, and I just go up the mountain and photograph. So it's cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So that helped. But critically, I got top 50 in critical mass last year, which helped. And doing portfolio reviews in PhotoFest in Houston started to get me some momentum. I did portfolio reviews in Paris, in Paris Photo, in November of last year. Also last year I got published in Geo France, not Nat Geo, but the equivalent roughly. It's a green magazine, but it's pretty well known in Europe, and it started to get me like, oh, it was a 10-page portfolio. It was like, oh, you're doing that. But it wasn't till the portfolio reviews at the end of last year when I started making connection with publishers. I had sent it digitally, PDF, like a maquette, my own maquette, to 20 publishers with some response, but nothing as good as when I showed it the prints in person. That's what moved the needle for me. And I had one publisher. I actually had 3 publisher offers when I was trying to figure it out, but the one publisher I went with, he was interesting, and I figured I'd show a little bit of the sort of inside baseball of that, because people might be interested. He said, "Yeah, I want to see more," because I was on, in a portfolio review, you have 20 minutes, so you show about 20 prints. And he's like, "I want to see more. Send me 800 photos."
800.
800, yeah. He's like, "Because I'll look at it quick. I just want to see the breadth of the, And I was like, "Great." So I sent him the next week, and we did 3 or 4 Zooms after that. He's like, "Yeah, you have something, but what about this?" And so I liked his vision. I liked how it was also collaborative. It wasn't just, this is how it's going to be, that some publishers do, or just like, okay, you did your photos, now let us do design. Like, it was very much a give and take. So that's going to be with Ghost Publishing in the UK, out of the UK. And they're relatively small, but they're quite well known in the photo book world. Also, it's helpful because I have 2 major exhibits coming up this year. The first I'm exhibiting in about a month in the UK. Actually, at a bit of a non-conventional venue. It's WOMAD Festival, which is a music festival. It was the one that was developed by Peter Gabriel and that stuff. in Southwest England. And the theme this year is Global Carnival. So the curator actually from PhotoFest found me. And we're doing exhibits in 3 different venues, in 3 different areas in the venue. First is like outdoor, like 1 meter by 1 meter vinyl, big photos, and then one in a traditional gallery, and then one in the library for more educational purposes.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's July, but that'll before the book comes. But the big one that I've been planning is the one in Germany, and that's in November of this year. November 11th is the beginning of the carnival season in Germany, so that's when that carnival is going to open the exhibit. And this is in a big building in called the Stadthaus in Ulm, which is a medium-sized city in southern Germany, in Bavaria, between Munich and Stuttgart. And it's a big building. It's the biggest exhibition space in the town, in the city. It's a Richard Meyer building, huge, brutal, massive rooms, and they're going to make 40 big prints, and it's going to be a whole big thing. Definitely a good step up for my career. And so we're planning to have the book, in hand for that, because that's a 3-month exhibit.
That's awesome.
So the good thing about that is that they're printing and framing it, so it's just going to be sustainable insofar as I can pack that up and send it to the next venue for 2024. Yeah.
Please shoot some amazing installation photos for us, for everyone that can't get out to Germany this summer.
Noted. That's going to be November, not the summer, but yes, so we'll do. Yeah.
So you mentioned the reviews and you mentioned the curators. So the curator for the festival, was that someone you met at the portfolio review, or was that someone you just reconnected to?
Both, actually. Both of them I met in Paris at PhotoFest Paris, which was in 2019. But one I had met in 2016. So I guess the idea is one of the one in UK. Well, him, David Drake, I think. I met him in 16, 19, and then 2022. So to those who are considering portfolio reviews, and I know you and I have discussed this personally offline, it's a bit of a long game, right? It's getting to know. And this one was interesting in Houston with David, because I sat down with him, and for a vagary of the schedule, I hadn't necessarily chosen because he knew my work, but I got him anyway. So I sat down with him and was like, my work already. Like, what do you want to talk about? And he's like, no, show me the new work. And it was a very different conversation than, oh, hello, my name is Jason Gardner, nice to meet you. It was much more relaxed. Of course, helped by the fact that we'd had beers the night before, and had chat. But the same thing with the curator in Ulm, someone who I'd met originally in Paris in 19 and followed up when I got the Geo magazine article. And then she's like, we might be able to do something. And then, like 6 months later, kind of confirmed it. And then at the Houston Photo Fest in 2022, we were able to sit down, and we happened to be the same session. So I showed her everything. And for an hour session, she basically selected the show there, which was kind of nice. Yeah. So portfolio reviews do help. I love prints. I love big prints. I like a lot of photographers say that, but it's definitely a different experience, the analog experience. Yeah.
Are you gonna, you've got the show, you've got the exhibition, you've gotten some press. Are you which reviews are you gonna go back to any of the reviews? And if so, which ones?
I haven't thought about that. I mean, this year I'm pretty full up, but I was going to go to Arl this year, but then I didn't because I have to prepare for the exhibit. If I went to Arl, then it would be too much follow up. And in fact, Arl is the end of my Kickstarter, so I just couldn't do it. So I guess what's the next review? I don't even know what would be next coming up.
I guess
maybe
Belfast is online. I think maybe this weekend.
Yeah, I guess I'm not doing that.
PhotoFest did announce that they're doing some online only as the step in between the in-person.
Yeah.
And then I would guess the center, Santa Fe.
Center. Yeah. That could be good. There's also one. There's also in Chico, I think, a book thing. Yeah, I've been head down in production and preparation that I haven't really looked towards getting out, but I imagine I will. Yeah. It's going to kind of debut around Paris Photo as well, so there'll be some of that. Yeah. in
So
November.
yeah, so the book is a Kickstarter project. You
Yes,
said you're over 70% funded, which is amazing.
I'm at
Um,
74%. I'm basically one backer shy of 75%.
Did
This is
you
going to
refresh
be
the feed since we started talking? Because maybe it's up to
no.
75 now.
I did not.
Click. I want to
Okay,
know.
I refresh it pretty every 5 minutes.
Okay.
Like it's ridiculous. Yeah,
that's
it's
the
ridiculous.
obsessive likes right there. Like,
Oh
does
my
anybody
God,
love me?
I
Does
love it.
anybody love me? Does anybody love
Yeah,
me?
yeah. It's ridiculous. But no, it's I mean, I ran a Kickstarter about 10 years ago for my first book, and at least I had some of the organization down. It's certainly stressful, but the more you can communicate with different channels, the better, then you'll do well. And let's see, yeah, I'm at 74%. And you could pre-order the book. It's 60 US for that. I think the details are 220 pages, 130 images, all color. It's going to be printed in Italy at the very highest quality. So that will be helpful. And I will go on press. And if you know anything about Gost, I can't say highly enough about the creative process with them. Again, I love in person. I sent them the edit, and then we had a tighter edit, and he said, "Come." And I went to London, and we basically laid it out on his floor for 2 or 3 days. Right. So at first we looked through these, we had these little printouts. It's the old way of doing it, but it's really great because of 2 reasons. Number one, you see the totality of the project in a different way than you would if you were on PDF. And number two, you start to see the relationships between spreads, and you see the flow, not just like, is this image good, but is this set good? Is this book good? Is this, sort of chunk of images good? And it was always less about, oh, does this image good or not? Obviously, that's step one, but does it work in a pair or does it work by itself? And then these sequence of these 4 spreads, where does it stutter? Where does it not flow for you? Okay, maybe we have to move this spread here. We'll move the spread here. It's still in process, but that probably 2 or 3 days of focused effort saved weeks upon weeks of back and forthing. And
if we had Tony Stark and we were able to like be moving the projection with our hands up on the wall just with the JPEGs to see how the layout was going and everything, you can do it digitally. But it's so true, and I've said this to everybody, I completely agree with you that it matters so much to be able to be seeing the entire project, the sequence, what comes before, what comes after, like, is it repetitive, is it is it changing up enough, how's the flow, like, there's a rhythm that you have to build, and it changes all based on that sequence. And it's so hard to tell sometimes why something is or isn't working until you get that, it's almost because it's linear and non-linear, right? Because the linear aspect of the book is the page. It's never going to change once
correct,
it's locked
but it's
in.
also non-linear. I'm not a note on that. I'm not doing it organized by country. I'm not doing it organized by theme or whatever. It's going to be very visual. And I see it like a music album. There's a beginning, middle, and end, right? And a lot of people start, you like our idea is to start strong in the beginning and end strong as well, and have strong images throughout. But there is a definite flow, and specifically to this work, it's a little bit about seasons. Kind of how, because Carnival time is that transition point between winter and spring, right? So there's a lot of photos in snow. There's some with green. Not necessarily matching them, having them flow one back and forth to each other. So we think about these 3 or 4 major themes, these sort of through lines that go throughout the work. And that's what guides us too. Yeah. So super fascinating and interesting process. But the type of work that I pursue and that I photograph in this sort of book is going to be these small villages that often have not a lot of outside visitors, and it's really for them. And it's a very strong sense of identity, who they are, but it's also a sense of, well, I call it we the spirits because it's a spiritual thing, and it's also connected to the ancestors, right? A lot of the stuff is pre-Christian, like I said, and sort of pagan kind of these things, but it's showing often, like a tree man or leaf man, like the connection with the land and with nature. The inversion of putting a mask and becoming someone else, a little bit of blowing off steam and doing some crazy stuff, but also, recognizing the cyclic stuff of nature, of the year. And for me, the largest theme, if you come away from this thinking nothing else, is that Carnival is not just a party and parade in the streets. It's something cultural and meaningful and significant in the modern day, you know. And on another level, there's not many photographers I could point to who have done multiple countries like this. So you start to see similar themes emerge, throughout all the countries, and that's the interesting thing too. So it's good stuff.
Looking forward to seeing it. So this is the second Kickstarter. So like, what are some of the tools and techniques that you used to like make the Kickstarters successful? Like, what have you needed to do?
Well, besides between the first Kickstarter, excuse me, and this one, I've consulted on 5 or 6 other ones. So I will say the things that I give advice to friends and clients, and that I sort of mostly followed myself, which is, at the end of the day, it's all about your list and your sort of your tribe, your audience, right? So a lot of the work is, yes, there's a lot of follow-up, but a lot of the work is in the 30 to 60 days before you launch, right? You have to put together video, you have to put together photos in the story, obviously, but you have to look at your list in a very, with a magnifying glass. And you have to, because your time is limited, your resources are limited, you have to figure out who you want to follow up with, right? Me, I've got 8,000-10,000 contacts just from my universe, from between, Google Mail, social media, et cetera, WhatsApp, et cetera. And so you can't follow up with 10,000 people. You just can't. I mean, and no one gets MailChimps anymore. I love MailChimp, nothing against them, but just no one sees emails. Like, it's often when they see something multiple times when it kind of comes through, right? In different ways. Maybe they get an email and then they'll see something on social and they're like, oh yeah, that. Oh, but I'm too busy now. But next week they get a reminder, that kind of thing. So it's being consistent and being targeted with who you follow up with. And then I would suggest to anyone considering a Kickstarter for their artistic project in general, not have to be photography, but who is the best, who will resonate with my work the best, right? So for me in Carnival, it started with people who love Carnival, right? And so how do you find them, right? There's Facebook groups, there's people I know. I had a couple people on Instagram who, kindly, they asked permission. They reposted some work over the years. And I noticed that every time they reposted my work, I got like 8, 10, 12, 20, 50 new followers. So like people really dialed into that type of thing. So I asked them before the thing, if I supply you some photos, can you post and tag me and, all that stuff? And they did. And one person in specific, who's really a Carnival person, a lot of people follow her, and she helped. Yeah. So it's finding some partners, finding some people who resonate with your work. Yeah, just it's a lot of work, doing a lot of work, just being on it, yeah, you can't just put up the page and just let it go,
Yeah. A lot of
um,
follow-up.
yeah.
Are you doing any other pre-sale incentives for larger contributions, or no?
There are some, yes. Well, I mean, the way Kickstarter works is this rewards, right? It's my campaign is the essence of pre-sale of the book, but should people be inspired further, there's limited edition prints, obviously in 3 different sizes, right? If someone's inspired to get gifts for their, clients or their friends, I do a price break at 5 books, that kind of thing. It's a little bit less. Although, the economics of book publishing makes it so you can't really cut that much, but, I think everyone knows that. And then at the very higher level, a photo shoot by me, or I can come and present the work to people's organization. And the very highest reward, the very top echelon, is to go with me for next year's Carnival to photograph. Yes. That's the brass ring.
That's a good one. I like that.
Everything, all costs included. I take care of everything. Just have to get to the nearest airport. We'd select the Carnival and we go plunge in, go meet the people, eat the food, shoot the stuff.
Oh, that sounds like a fun trip.
I'm not an official guide, but it's just, I show, the real thing.
It would be amazing.
So, let me see. Yeah, did that answer your question? I feel like it did, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, okay. It's perfect. And then
But it's
so
been interesting to see, of the backers that I have now, um, I'm kind of trying to give more advice to the listening audience. There's sort of three levels of your sort of network, your world, right? There's your core. There's the people who you know really well. You know what their favorite color is. You know when their birthday is. You know what their partner's name is. You know where they live. Something about them. There's maybe the second tier, which is you've met them and you know something about them, but you don't know them so well. And then there's the fringe, right? There's people like you might have you like they might recognize your name, or maybe you met them once, but you haven't really chatted with them. And so you kind of want to try to hit all three of those tiers, because you never know, someone from the outside would love your work, right? But you also have to think about the people in your core. They know, like, and trust you, and they want to succeed. It's not really about how gorgeous the work is, but they kind of you as a photographer, right? And then there's maybe the second tier, and that's sort of Carnival people. In my case, people love the concept of Carnival, so it's not really, they don't really know me, but they like the photos, right? And then there's also people who sort of support arts in general, right? Oh yeah, that sounds like a great thing. I've been pleasantly surprised by people who I don't even recognize their name have been backers.
nice.
Yeah.
Once the book is out, how much will you need to be involved with setting up signings? And is the publisher handling any of that, or do you need to set up, like, do they go to some of the book fairs and then you go to
they
others?
do all the big European book fairs, and they do ICP, and they do Photo, and then some other ones as well. I don't remember off the top of my head the list, but they also are doing distribution professionally through Ingram in the States, and North America, I should say. So that'll get to the major bookstores, not Barnes and Noble, the major photo art bookstores, Dashwood and whatever. And so they also handle distribution also in Europe and some in Asia, I think Japan. So I don't have to do that. That's a good part of going with a publisher. In terms of setting up book signings, yeah, I think we'll both do it, as long as I'm not setting up the same place that they are. I'm not going to plan on doing a whole big of my own sort of book tour. It's going to be a little bit of, how that ends up being. But they're pretty positive about the project. Obviously, they're doing it, but because they see that it's in 16 countries, there's a lot of potential. And in a lot of these countries in Europe, Carnival is an important part of their sort of culture. So I have high hopes, but you never know. Yeah.
But that's great to hear that they're doing so they'll be at ICP. So like if the timing works and everything, you'll be able to be there, and they'll have, probably some windows of time where their artists come in to do the signings, and you'll be able to be there. And the same with Photo. And I think that's such a treat for artists, just in general. It's like, it's not often that everyone gets to be at Photo signing their book at a publisher's table.
Unfortunately, the Photo this year is November 8 to 12, and my Germany opening is the 11th of November. So I've already campaigned for Gost. Can I please have the first day at the booth? And they're cool with it. They're totally super cool. So, but yeah, I'm lucky to be based in Paris and New York to be able to have access to all that stuff. Yeah.
So good.
So let's see. I feel like we got a lot of stuff, but I think it should be interesting. I mean, my work is bridging between, ethnography, documentary, and fine art, right? So it's a little bit of everything thrown in there, and in terms of, it's not strictly one or the other. I will have, the book will be a monograph insofar as it's going to be not a lot of text in the book, maybe at the back, like an index text talking about it. But in terms of in the meat of the book, will be just largely locations, I think, so people can know where it is. So we're trying to do a little bit of less is more idea, and have a little bit of a cleaner design. So that's that. And it's been fascinating to see that that piece come through, the work come through. One thing I would definitely say to people who are thinking about doing a Kickstarter or crowdfunding in general is definitely make a video. I've had a lot of views of that thing, and it's maybe a 2-minute video where I explain and I show some more stuff sort of from the field to give people a feel of what I'm documenting. And I find like it's an interesting sort of encapsulation of that. It's basically my 45-minute, 1 hour artist talk compressed into 2.5 minutes. Yeah, good times. Yeah.
Up
Good editor.
edit.
Yeah, no, yeah, I had a good editor. Yeah.
That helps.
And I think the interesting thing to me is, especially when people who they only know the stereotypical sort of advertised carnivals, they think Rio, they think bikinis and sequins and it's hot. And when they see Carnival in the snow, they're like, what the hell's going on? Like, well, I didn't even know there was Carnival in Bulgaria and Slovenia and and so that's an interesting, for me, sort of eye-opening thing, and educational, but also just kind of like cultural, thing.
Very cool.
And I've been pleasantly surprised by the amount of collectors I've gotten for who are buying prints, not only in support of the project, but and they often, when they tell me, well, I've never been to this carnival, but I just couldn't stop looking at it. Like they have a direct connection with sort of whatever character that they sort of feel. And it almost doesn't matter where it's from, it's something else. Yeah.
There's some energy there that resonates with them.
Yeah. It's either the color or the position or how, yeah. Certain images, and I won't share which because different are for different people. They have a lot of connection. They're like, wow, I love that one. Like I can't stop thinking, it's in my dreams, and I often get that like a couple days after an opening or a talk. I did one event in New York and a couple when I was there and a couple in Paris last week. And, it was clear certain ones that people were talking about afterwards.
Nice. And maybe it's too soon to ask, but do you have something in mind next
project?
Yes.
It is a little too soon. I mean, I have a couple things in mind that will be in cultural. I won't stop shooting carnivals because it will be for future exhibits and future for the archive. But I do want to do something different. I have a couple things in mind, but it's a little too soon to kind of. I'm so focused on what's in front of me because it is a bit of a hurry up scenario. Not as much as the previous one, but a lot has to happen before November. Yeah. So
yeah, it's
definitely
not done yet.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Where
yeah.
can people see the work and contribute? It's
right. So it's on Kickstarter, so they have to. So without sharing a link, I think the link will be shared on social later. But it's basically Kickstarter.com, and then you can search for my name or the title of the project, which is We the Spirits. 3 words: We the Spirits.
And that's link. You've got a link on your site as well at Jason Gardner,
or there should be on the news section, kind of the blog, but it's also all over my Instagram and Facebook.
On your social feeds.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you so much. I'm excited
You are
to
welcome.
see
It was my
the
pleasure.
book. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to join. And thank you again, B&H and the team for hosting. I will be back in a couple of weeks with Dennis Deffenbaugh, who is another author who's just got a book come out through the RIT press. And I'm kind of psyched about talking to him because he's my old professor. So I'm looking forward. We've got a long history of photography together. And we basically only talk about photography when we see each other. So should be a lot of fun. So thank you again, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And I will see you again here in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Take care, Stephen. Bye.